I have tried every get rich as a developer method that the internet tries to sell you. From building a SaaS, grinding lead code into a FANG position, climbing the corporate ladder, freelancing, trading, dropshipping, all of it. One of these methods built me a $7 million a year business down here in Los Angeles, while the rest ate months of my life and paid me almost nothing. And here's what I learned the hard way. The methods that are being pushed the hardest are actually the worst possible place for a developer to start. So in this video, I'm going to be ranking every single one of the methods, giving you one reason I would never start with each, and at the very end, we will discuss the one method that I would actually bet on if I was starting from zero today. This is the same method that not only built me a $7 million business, but also took countless other software engineers from employee to owners in my startup accelerator, Code to CEO. So without further ado, let's get straight into it. What better place to start than to talk about the most popular method among software engineers when it comes to getting rich, and that is building a SaaS. You all know it. The dream of building a SaaS, sitting in your room, coding all day in, day out, creating a software that millions and hundreds of thousands of people all across the world can use it while they're paying you on a monthly basis, and you can sit on the beach drinking your Mai Tai and continuously get passive income month to month. Now, what people don't actually talk about is that this is not only the hardest possible business model to make successful, but it is also the least likely business model to actually succeed. And keep in mind, SaaS is also the business model that I spent the most amount of time on. As a software engineer, I always wanted to make a SaaS. And don't get me wrong, it's not like I didn't have quote unquote successful software that made money. No, I had software that generated a little bit of revenue, but at the end of the day, it was nothing like what I saw online or what people made it seem like it was about. My expectations were, as long as I just build something that people want, it's going to sell itself. But what I ended up discovering was that building had nothing to do with the success of the SaaS. In fact, I saw countless signs, software that was not up to standard, and I could have done a way better job at that particular software, making such an absurd amount of money strictly due to the distribution and marketing. And that's when I came to the conclusion that SaaS is in fact one of the worst business models to start with as a software engineer, and it's also one of the worst businesses to get into, period, unless you know exactly what it is doing, and in my personal opinion, unless you have some other type of business experience as a developer. Now, countless of you watching probably did not want to hear this, because if my estimation is correct, most of you watching this video would have probably been betting on a software to give you the financial freedom that you are actually pursuing. However, understand that when it comes to a SaaS, as you know it, building something from complete scratch, building a quote-unquote good product, letting it sit out there, and if it's a good product, people will continuously use it, refer other people, and it will grow. That is not how things actually work. Furthermore, a lot of the successful cases that you do see out there when it comes to successful software, what you don't see are the hundreds of thousands of failed software that not only could have been a lot better from a technical standpoint than the current software that you might see being successful, but most often than not, the successful software that you do see usually came from a pre-existing distribution channel. Meaning, whether it's the indie developers that you are familiar with online, whether it's another founder that came out of nowhere and created something that started spreading like wildfire, chances are, most often than not, the distribution problem and the marketing problem was solved way before a single line of code was ever written. Now, I also tried my hand at freelancing, specifically on Upwork, and this did not last too long, and that is because it was one of the most absurd ways of actually making money. Meaning, if I was pretty much located in the first world country, there was no reason for me to get on Upwork or Fiverr, primarily because the opportunity cost was too much. That time would have been better spent on either A, trying to acquire these clients manually instead of going on platforms such as Upwork, or B, it would have been much more worth it for me to actually dive into other ways of getting rich as a developer, as opposed to just trying to compete on Upwork or Fiverr with everybody else. Now, does this mean that if you are located in a first world country, you cannot make a living off of Upwork or Fiverr? That is not what I'm saying. I'm saying it can still be considered a decent enough method, but if I were to make a classification S, A, B, C, D, and F tier, I would place it at actually about D tier, C tier range. Whereas SaaS would be pretty much the same exact thing, C tier or D tier range as well. Both would be somewhat similar. The only time I would ever recommend somebody get on Upwork or Fiverr is if they are located at a second or third world country where they will be able to actually manage with the competition, with the prices, as most developers on there, at least from a software engineering perspective, will be located in either Eastern Europe or Asian countries, or of course Latin American countries. Very rarely will you see developers that are located in Western Europe or Northern America, and if you do see a few of those developers there, they do not have nearly the same amount of jobs completed as their counterparts in other regions. You see this happening, of course, with the arbitrage of just employment as well, with H-1B visas and a few other things. It is simply a lot more logical for people to pay cheaper for the same development work in another country, especially if the quality does not drop down too much or if there's very little difference in quality. It is simply the logical conclusion. As a direct result, for somebody living in the United States, it did not make any logical sense for me to do anything on Upwork or Fiverr simply because the opportunity cost was way too much and I would be wasting my time. That being said though, you can still somewhat succeed on there. However, like I said, it's not that it's impossible, it's just that it's a C tier / D tier opportunity. Next, let's talk about being overemployed, having multiple remote jobs at the same exact time such that you can collect a paycheck from them. Most often than not, if your employment does not bar you from doing that, your main employer I should say, then it is a relatively good idea to be overemployed. However, I tried being overemployed and frankly, I absolutely hated it because not only did I hate my original 9-to-5 job, I also hated my second 9-to-5 job. And when I use hate, it's a little bit of a strong word and I don't want you to get the wrong idea. I didn't necessarily hate the fact that I had a 9-to-5 job. I hated the fact that my freedom was so determined on such useless things, such as a stand-up meeting that really went nowhere, work that didn't really contribute much of anything, and sure, the paycheck came in and at one point in time, I was making over $30,000 a month from being overemployed, but that lasted a very short time because only after about 2 months, I ended up quitting the second job that I had. And it's not because they were in conflict with one another, it's not because I couldn't have done it, but rather I realized that this was not the path for me to go simply because I absolutely hated every single day doing that particular thing. I realized that my love for money is maybe not as much as I initially thought because I was not willing to put up with not only one job, but 2 jobs where my skills are worth a lot more than I'm being paid, even though in hindsight, I was still able to get by at both of these jobs, working less than 100 hours a week and pulling in close to $30,000 a month thereafter. If I went back, would I do it again? Maybe if both jobs were extremely easy, all fully remote, and I could get away with working 40 hours for both jobs. However, even then, like I said, the opportunity cost is just simply way too much to invest that much time and energy into not only interviewing, finding those other jobs, and maintaining that stressful balance of not losing either or. My personal opinion, if I were to rank this on tier list, I would probably place it at B/C tier. Slightly better than freelancing on Upwork and Fiverr, and slightly better than a SaaS, of course, for a developer just getting started. Keep in mind, everything is contextual here. I'm only talking to the beginner developer trying to get into the business world of things. Now, I'm going to differentiate freelancing on Upwork and Fiverr versus freelancing on a local level. And let's talk about that one next, freelancing on a local level. This one I'm going to put at actually an immediate A tier, simply because freelancing on a local level, meaning helping local businesses in your area, helping them build the software that they want to build, or helping them solve business problems that can be automated or just be solved by using an app, I will place that as A tier because not only is there no actual competition, not only is there a very little worry that you are going to underprice yourself or that other people are going to bring down your pricing, so you're going to have to price match, but rather it is actually really good because most often than not, they do not have another choice. And not that they don't have another choice, they are not aware of another choice. And you are able to build a relationship that leads to referrals and of course a consistent flow of clients. So if I were to go the freelancing route, I would most definitely choose so on a local level and try to expand my influence on a local level or within my network or the people that I know, as opposed to going online digitally and trying to freelance that way. But once again, I would still not do this simply because of the opportunity cost for the main method that we will talk about very, very shortly. Now, next thing, of course, trading. Trading, I got into it because everybody and their mother was talking about it during the COVID era. Of course, cryptocurrency, meme coins, and regular stock trading. It is still one of the most popular things that the internet tries to sell you. And I had some ups, I had a lot of downs as well, but all in all, it was simply not worth it for me. Once again, opportunity cost-wise, but also stress-wise, having to deal with the ups, having to deal with the downs. And I realized that the ups weren't nearly as rewarding and the downs were extremely taxing on my mental state, you can say, as I was a little bit of an emotional trader. And I realized that this is pretty much turning to almost gambling, especially when it came to cryptocurrencies and meme coins. I realized it is really no different than me going to a casino and trying to just put all my money on black or on roulette, because at least when it came to meme coins, there was very little due diligence you could do just to make sure that you weren't going to get rugged, just to understand who was behind the meme coin. And I did have a little bit of couple good plays that I made a decent amount of money on. However, it was not something that I would stick to on a long-term basis, and I really treated it as something that I could do with my disposable income, as opposed to really putting anything in there and expecting a big return. It was simply too high risk for not that high of a reward in the grand scheme of things. Now, does this to say somebody can't make a living out of doing this? They most definitely can. However, when it comes to a developer making money, I still believe there are far better opportunities with less risk and a higher reward. Next thing that I tried was dropshipping. And dropshipping was actually the first time I ever made more than $1,000 in a single day for multiple days in a row. I tried dropshipping numerous amount of times. It is, I would say, probably the second thing that I tried the most of right after a SaaS, because I really wanted to succeed at it. And after hundreds of thousands of dollars, after multitude of courses, and after a multitude of companies, starting from an anime-themed coffee brand all the way to selling lighters, I simply did not choose to pursue with it. Not because I did not see any amount of success. I actually did a decent amount of success at the very, very end. However, I stopped it because of all the BS that you had to deal with in specifically the e-commerce and dropshipping space. Ad account bans for no justifiable reason, chargebacks from individuals, different lawsuits, copyright issues, so many other things that when it seemed like the operation was finally going well and you cracked the code, everything was going well, some other BS would come into the pipeline. And especially at the time when I was just me, I didn't have a team and I didn't really know that much about business. It was simply, once again, I made the decision to say that it was too much, not worth my time. I'd rather put it into something else. Now, once again, does this mean this is a bad opportunity? No. If I go back now and I try to do it again with my current team, with the money behind me, I will most definitely succeed at it. And I do actually have an e-commerce brand right now that I run. That being said, it was not something that I would recommend to a beginner developer trying to get into this. So what would I actually recommend? Well, that is where our last method comes into play. And that is what I will call the local celebrity consulting model. I know it's a fancy word, but all it really is, it's a consulting business, a service-based consulting business with one goal. And that goal is to connect the technical to the non-technical. In essence, the best way to get rich as a developer that I have personally found, and countless other software engineers inside Code to CEO have also come to observe and realize, has been to become the authority in a local environment, specifically in your own city as well as in your own network, such that you are able to connect the non-technical to the technical people through a consultancy, meaning primarily service-based businesses. What does this actually mean? Well, if you are located in, for example, Los Angeles, like how I am, a consultancy would use my particular set of skills as a software engineer to aid other businesses in solving their problems. Now, the way I would solve this problem would most likely have to do with creating some type of automation, creating some type of workflow, and in certain cases, actually creating software. However, that software that I would be creating wouldn't necessarily be a SaaS, it would be a custom tailored solution for that particular business in mind. And now you might be thinking, Bago, aren't you just describing freelancing with a few extra steps? No, not quite, because freelancing, the basis of it, it is still based on your time and you charge by the hour. However, in a consulting business, it is not dependent on your time. You do not charge by the hour, you charge by the value. And one of the first things you try to do is actually begin outsourcing in that business, one of which is actually fulfillment. And this is what actually allowed me to create a $7 million a year business in revenue down here in LA with what I would say as little BS I had to deal with as opposed to every other business model that I just talked about on this list. It's not that one is easier than the other, it's just the amount of stress and bullshit that you are able to tolerate such that you are able to see success with any one of these business models. Because like I said, all these business models that we ranked, you can still succeed with them. It's just the opportunity cost is way too high for you not to be doing something else. And in this particular case, this model is, on a fundamental level, the best way to go about doing that particular thing, becoming rich as a developer. So how do you actually start? Well, first thing you have to do is take a look at your unique advantages. Where do you actually live? What city are you in? Who do you know? And what are your experiences comprised of? Once you identify these three things, you take a look at the cross-section of all three and you begin understanding what problem could I target? And of course, this problem should be relevant within your network and in your local area, and that is what you begin pursuing. From then, the game becomes all about building credibility and becoming local celebrity of sorts, meaning you attend your Chamber of Commerce events, you join a BNI, you host events in your area such that people are able to recognize that you are an authority in whatever it is that you are doing. In my particular example, I am the authority in AI. So the example with my current business, since I help other businesses with AI adoption, and of course AI adoption is general, but depending on what we need to do for each business, the workflow can change from a simple, let's say, our receptionist that we're doing. It can be an intricate workflow that we have to create from the ground up. It can be a completely new software, whatever the case. Sometimes it can be just consulting on a one-on-one basis. But whatever the case is, the fundamental thing is everybody recognizes me in a local area that, okay, that guy is, let's say, the AI guy, or that guy is the software guy, that guy is the tech guy. They come to me whenever they need any type of help. Of course, can you be a little bit more specific than that? Yes, you can. You can own a particular vertical. Specifically for us, we are quite relevant in the healthcare and the construction space. We have had projects in a few other industries, but primarily people in healthcare and construction will come to us because of the severe amount of referrals that have gone around and the fact that healthcare and construction are quite popular in the area that I am in, which once again goes back to the unique advantage that I talked about. So this, on a fundamental level, is the best possible way to get rich as a developer. Now, is it a get rich quick scheme? No. In my opinion, it is get richer quicker type of thing, because you're not going to be able to become a millionaire within 2 months. However, within 1 to 3 year timeline, you will be able to achieve the financial freedom that you have so much so actually thought about. And you'll be able to get there on a fundamental level way easier and way more consistently than a SaaS, freelancing, trading, dropshipping, or any other ventures that we discussed. Now, if you want to learn more about what this actual celebrity model means in detail, then you should check out this video right here where I explain from A to Z how to make $100,000 a month as a software engineer using the same exact model that we just discussed. As always, thank you so much for watching, and I hope you have a good rest of your day.